Hello, tonight our video is on the distributive property. Now, this is a property that I'm sure you've seen, and we have used it already this year many times. So the distributive property, what it shows is that when you have a number that's being multiplied by a parenthesis, you can distribute that number by multiplying it by all the terms inside the parenthesis. So here you can see that if I have A being multiplied by the parenthesis and then it says B plus C, that's the same as A times B plus A times C. So let's do an example of what that might look like using numbers. So for instance, let's say that I had something like this. 5 times the quantity 3 plus 6. If I apply the distributive property and multiply 5 times 3 and then add 5 times 6, this is a true statement. Okay, let's simplify this side over here. This is 5 times 3 is 15, and 5 plus 6, or 5 times 6 rather, is 30. So this ends up equaling 45. All right, on the left side, if I do 3 plus 6, that's 9. And 5 times 9 is 45. So it does prove to be true. And this is very helpful when we're solving equations and there's variables inside those parentheses. So let's go ahead and try that. All right, so here we have an equation where I have a parenthesis with a variable on the inside. So the first thing I need to do is apply distributive property to remove that parenthesis. So I'm going to rewrite this. 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, see what I've done there? By applying distributive property, I can remove the parenthesis. And so now, by doing that, I can finish solving, and I can also combine like terms to help me solve. So here I can combine 10 minus 6, which is 4. Okay, now think about your problem-solving skills. What would you do from this point? Well, if you said get rid of one of the variable terms, you're right. We want to get all the variables to one side. I would suggest that we subtract an x from both sides to zero out this x over here. Okay, so if we do that, that will leave 2 on the right side. And then over here, 2x minus x equals x, and I still have a plus 4. So now I have my variable to one side, and I can isolate it by doing my next step, which is subtracting 4 from each side. So x will equal 2 minus 4, which is negative 2. All right, our next example. Here on each side of the equation we have some distributing to do. Now notice that here there is a number in front of that parenthesis, even though it's not written. Do you know what it is? Well, if you said negative 1, you're right. There's a minus sign with an invisible 1 there. So when we distribute, we're really distributing a negative 1. All right, so we're going to get 8. And then negative 1 times x is negative x. And then negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. Another way to read this would be 8 and then the opposite of x minus 4. Well, the opposite of x minus 4 would be negative x plus 4. All right, let's apply distributive property on the other side. 2 times 3x and then 2 times minus 1. 2 times 3x is 6x, and then 2 times negative 1 is a minus 2. All right, so now that we've applied distributive property, let's continue solving. On the left side, I can combine these two terms, 8 plus 4, that's 12. Let's get 12 minus x equals 6x minus 2. Now I'm going to get the x's all to one side. Let's add an x to both sides. Okay, that will zero that out. That leaves 12 equals 6x plus x is 7x minus 2. All right, so now that my variable's all on the right side, this is what I'm focused on the right side, so I'm going to zero out minus 2 by adding 2. So that gives us 14 equals 7x. Therefore, x is going to equal 2. All right, so how are you doing? Is this sinking in? All right, let's try another one. All right, well, don't let the size or the look of the equation intimidate you. Just apply what we know. Our first step will be apply distributive property. Here, here, and here. Here we have 4 times x, which is 4x. 4 times, that's a minus 1, so that's minus 4. Remember what we talked about. This is a negative 1. So this is negative 1 times x, that's a negative x. This is negative 1 times 3, that's a negative 3. Over here we have 3 times x, that's 3x. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Now let's combine our like terms on each side. So we're going to simplify each of those expressions. 4x and minus x, that makes 3x. Minus 4 and minus 7, or excuse me, minus 3, that makes minus 7. Here we have x plus 3x, so that's 4x, and we have minus 3. All right, so from here we have a choice. We could subtract 3x from both sides or subtract 4x from both sides. I'm going to choose to subtract 3x because I would like to avoid negative numbers. So here, that's 0. We get minus 7 equals x minus 3. And now let's add 3 to each side. That's going to zero out. So we get negative 4 is equal to x. All right, we have one more. Let's go ahead and apply distributive property here and here. So here we get 2x minus 8. And then here we get, this is negative 1 again, so we get negative 2x and minus 4. Now let's combine the like terms. 2x and minus x is 1x, so we get x minus 8. Here 2x minus 2x equals x, plus 1 minus 4 equals minus 3. All right, well, if we stop right here, we can see that what's on both sides of the equation will never be equal to one another, ever. Doesn't matter what x is. And if you want to take it a step further, you can subtract an x from both sides, and you'll get negative 8 equals negative 3. Okay, that's a false statement, so there'll be no solution. All right? Okay, well, hopefully you listened well and you took all those notes. And if so, you've done a very good job, well-deserved points for your homework. And don't forget, read some books.